You know, there's only so much that the surfer dude can take. This cat no longer loves food. Oh no, no, no. Hey folks, MasakoX here. It's that time again. April Fools! Yes, I love these times of year. For those of you new to the channel, first of all, I would like to say hello and welcome to you. And then secondly, let me tell you about these types of videos before we get started properly. Back in 2018, it all started with a little ditty I like to call What If Broly Turned Good? Back before the Broly movie came out and the idea of a good boy Broly was completely laughable and farcical. Oh, how things have changed so fast, right? But the point of these April Fool what-ifs are that we can here be a little more crazy than we can be with the typical stories. With those videos, we need to be careful and logical and ensure that it all makes sense within the major context of the overall Dragon world. At this time of year again, and going forward with this particular story, we don't have to worry so much about that kind of stuff. And instead, we can do essentially what we want, so long as it's entertaining and it keeps using characters created within Dragon Ball. Those are the only caveats. Last year's April Fool What If was What If the Ginyu Force Turned Good? And you can expect the next part of that story later this month. Is Goldo going to be a less of a jerk here? You'll have to wait and see. A lot of the what if ideas we've gotten over the last couple of years for these kind of things came from you fine folks during our roundtable live streams. This year, let's be honest, Hav and I were struggling for ideas. We had either done stories that we'd already wanted to do for so long, or we didn't really want to call upon some ideas yet. One idea in particular got our attention, and was something we just could not say no to. Now, to not spoil you the outcome right away, we're going to only show you who proposed the idea. So, thank you Jay, you truly are the real McCoy. Okay, pun out of the way, let's set the scene. So to start things off, we start with the character who is at the centre of most of the fan-made jokes regarding the series, Yamcha. When does this take place? Oh, don't worry. We're not going to be doing that whole start of the Dragon Ball series onwards thing and have it like last 20 bajillion parts. This is starting relatively late into proceedings, and the catalyst for said scenario is actually somewhat justifiable. It all begins in age 781, after a little bit of a contest to decide only the fate of the universe, its conclusion. And another tussle for said domain may be in the offing. After the Tournament of Power, Yamcha had felt pretty low and down with his lot. Despite the fact that he was ready to compete in the contest right from the outset of hearing it in his head, he'd ultimately been overlooked many times by the crew. Instead, he'd been waiting at his home for hours, waiting for the time he'd be called up, only for it to never happen. Now, as you could probably imagine, he understandably felt pretty upset at this snubbery of not being included. I mean, after all, wouldn't you feel the same if you had not only the power to help somewhat, but you were also willing to do so at a drop of a hat? Not only did his friends not answer his calls and enthusiasm to do his bit for the Dragon team that he had been doing all these years prior, but they also chose Frieza over him! Frieza! Of all people! He already felt sort of sore when Ten Shinhan had left him behind during the 1,000 soldier battle last year. But this was really pushing things to the nth degree here. Yamcha was starting to get a little bit sick and tired of being ignored. Still though, Frieza, man. Sure, the space tyrant was stronger than him and did help out quite a bit in the overall outcome of the event, and made sure that Universe 7 won, but poor Yamcha had hoped that all these years of loyal service meant something to his teammates, right? Sure, he did do that whole refusal thing initially, but Yamcha sighed loudly. Maybe he should have just said yes outright from the start instead of being all coy. Those guys must have gotten the wrong end of the stick here. Reverse psychology flying over their heads, clearly. On top of all this, he didn't have the benefits of Saiyan physiology to keep him trim and in his prime for a few more decades. He wasn't getting any younger as well, and his baseball career could soon be over too. Then, he would not only have any reputation or legacy, he'd have no money coming in, as well as being no help to the Dragon team at all. Even less help than he was now, obviously. He was counting his lucky stars already that, thanks to Roshi's prior training all those years ago, he was able to remain in his prime for longer than the average human, but still, that wasn't going to last forever, unless he really went hard into Roshi's training and did what he did and lived for hundreds of years. But his drive to do so had long since departed. He felt like a loser. Then things got even starker for him when he looked away from the battlefield. All of his friends in the here and now had something going for them in some way. They were going places, or at least establishing their lives and settling down. Families, careers, students of their very own to carry on their legacies. And all he had was Poir. Now don't get me wrong, Poir was the bestest friend he could dream for, but something else was missing. It was like living in the middle of the desert again all those years ago before they met Goku and Bulma. Except this time, it was a concrete desert instead of a regular sandy place. What was the point of even staying in the city other than for playing baseball? And even then, he could just simply fly into town faster than a car and he could live in the desert again. Oh, he felt so alone. In fact, if he had to be honest with himself, Yamcha felt that his age was starting to catch up with him in more ways than one. When he looked at the bigger picture, everything else taken into account, he was a 47-year-old man living alone. What had he done with his life? He thought to himself many times about perhaps rectifying the problem of age. He could have pulled up a Bulma and gather the Dragon Balls for himself and simply make himself slightly younger to stave off the rigors of aging for a couple of more decades. I mean, she was doing it. But what would his legacy be, really? Would he really want people to know that he had been so vain and self-obsessed to have made wishes on an eternal dragon for that kind of thing? Bulma could get away with it for all the work that she and her family had done to even make said orbs trackable and easy to use, and all of their lives richer in some shape or form, but it got to the point where even Poir was starting to notice the malaise descend over his best friend. Yamcha, what are you thinking about? Poir looked concerned for his friend, having seen him look all the more despondent these past few days after the tournament had concluded. Yamcha, though, tried to be brave and play it off as nothing in particular, nothing worrisome, and instead chose to change the subject a bit. Nothing, little buddy. I'm fine. Really. Say, would you like to, let's say, travel around the world and gather the Dragon Balls? Like the old times? It's been so long since we've had a simple adventure like back when. Poir looked kind of curious. You mean, you want to get the old gang back together and do it old school? Well, that's a great idea, but well, I don't think people have time for that anymore. Yamcha waves his hand to brush that idea aside. No, just you and me, buddy. Two desert bandits getting their own wish. It's been too long since we've had ourselves some double act dealing, some quality time just the two of us. Poir was a little dubious now. Well, that might be fun, but what are you going to ask for in the dragon? Do we really need anything at the moment? We'll see. And besides, it's about the journey, not the destination. But in order to gather these magical orbs, Yamcha needed to ask someone for help. But he didn't feel too worried about that, though. Well, he was sure that his friend Bulma would have his back. However, when he had gone to Capsule Corp to ask for the Dragon Radar, his friend for the Dragon Radar, he received quite the opposite reaction. Absolutely not! Bulma was pretty annoyed by his request, surprisingly. I've already prepared my own expedition, so no dice! Bowled over by this rejection, the bandit tried to reason with her. Oh, come on, Bulma, please! You've been using those Dragon Balls on and off by yourself for years, aging yourself down. I know you have. Okay, you still look good for it, but come on! Let me get one wish on them, at least! I've never had a chance to get something for myself. I think I deserve it after all I've done for you guys. Bulma sighed loudly. Alright, fine. Here's the radar. I can give you a capsule plane, but next year, these are mine and mine alone. You got that? Of course. Thank you, friend. And so, Yamcha and Poir started their own little mystical adventure to find the Dragon Balls. They had to travel all over the world, and they chose to do it more leisurely than usual. With flying by themselves, like they traditionally do, they could have just done all of this in a couple of hours, an hour if they really wanted to be quick, but with the plane, this meant they could take their time, perhaps appreciate the scenery some more and whatnot. But I'm afraid the illusions of nostalgia. Even with this more analog approach, the whole escapade was far less exciting than they'd hoped for from what they remembered. Thanks to their power and how things had changed since when they were teens, the entire process was still quite formulaic. Poir felt a little sad for his bestie about that, but finally, they still were able to gather all 7 of the Dragon Balls, and Yamcha could finally call Shenron.
What is your wish?
Yamcha thought for a moment for the right choice of words for said wish. I want to know what will be my legacy. All my friends have something going for them. What will people remember about me when I'm gone? The dragon moved forward a little in a dubious pose.
Are you sure you want to know?
Yeah. You've never been hesitant on a wish before, Shenron.
Your wish is granted.
At first, Yamcha felt like his mind was flying away from his body, like he was having an out-of-mind experience all from a simple wish. Whew. He was curious to find out, though, about his legacy, not minding the trippy side effects of it. But the first image he saw was... he recalled when he saw it. Really? Really? After all these years, this was his legacy? That loss to a Cyberman? It wasn't even a proper loss. That was a cheap shot. Very quickly, he realizes that he's seeing this image copied over hundreds and hundreds of times, with different variations to boot, but all with the same result. That same compromising position. He even saw the most recent iteration from just a few months ago. He could remember himself without the visions, which totally spoiled his baseball victory. Yamcha was getting furious at this bogus vision he was having. Since when did these astral projections get so demeaning and offensive? Oh, come on, I won that match! He complained to nobody in particular. Soon, though, things changed. He saw a world. A different world. This world initially seemed more hopeful. This was a world where he apparently was famous. Not necessarily famous for his baseball career, though. Oh, but when he looked closer at this iteration, this kind of reputation was not the kind in any way that he had hoped for. Everyone knew that pose here. There were toys of it, there were t-shirts of it, there were images of it being broadcast over the world 24/7, across the internet. Everything was basically pointing back to that loss, and that was the only thing people remembered him for. Does that sound familiar to you? He got struck by many sudden realizations here, but the most painful one was the fact that he would be remembered as a loser. He wasn't imagining it. A loser in a fictional story. The greatest loser of them all. The very definition of a loser. Outside of this vision, things were getting dire. Much to his horror, Poir had witnessed his friend falling down and giggling like a maniac on all fours, unaware of the terrors that his friend was actually witnessing inside of his own mind. This persisted for a good few minutes, but after a while, thankfully, Yamcha came to his senses and resumed full consciousness. Relieved to see his friend back in the land of the living once more, Poir shouted, "Yamcha, is everything all right?" The desert bandit gave him a weird smile. "Never felt better, little buddy." Having gotten his wish, Yamcha had had enough of dragons to last a lifetime. The dragon radar was then indeed returned to Bulma through her window. This angered her greatly as she went to chase after Yamcha, who she knew had the radar, but he was gone. He wasn't even around to shout at now. What was going on here? Instead, Yamcha bounced over to visit Goku. "Hey, Goku, could you do me a solid? I'm getting older all the time, you see, and I was thinking, maybe some Namekian training could, help me improve in my older years?" Goku, unaware of the ulterior motives going on from Yamcha, gladly accepted. "Sure thing, buddy. I can help you out." "You guys can take care of Poir for me while I'm gone, okay?" "But Yamcha..." "Oh, don't worry. I'll be fine." And so, without question, Goku helped his friend get to Namek through instant transmission. The elder Mori was surprised that such a seasoned warrior such as Yamcha wanted to train with them directly after all this time, but of course, after all the Dragon Team had done for them over the years, he gladly agreed to this. One of the things Yamcha also wanted to learn about while he was here was the language of the Namekians, which was provided to him with great fervour actually. The Namekians found this rather touching in fact, as while speaking the common tongue of the universe was good and all, they all understood it, talking in their native language though was much more natural to them, more relaxing. And with Yamcha wanting to learn, it felt very considerate and immersive, and so they really went to town to help him, trusting him to the nth degree. Throughout all of this, Yamcha had never been more focused in his life, and as things progressed, he had put to shame even the warriors that would become the Namekian saver not too long from now. He was improving at a fantastic speed. He worked hard like this for months, away from his Earth and friends who had to deal with Broly. Thanks to all of this hard graft, according to the old Namekian custom, our hero was granted 2 wishes upon the Dragon Balls. Granted, he could have just asked for the wishes himself as soon as he had gotten here, but that didn't feel right. Yamcha wanted to earn them the hard way, and felt like he deserved these wishes. No radars, no easy pickings, no because you're our friends. On the back of this also, his Namekian became good enough to ask Porunga himself the wish in Namekian, not relying on anyone else.
So then, traveler, who speaks our tongue, what is your wish?
Yamcha grinned with a hint of madness in his eyes. I want to be the strongest in the universe. Porunga's brow raised up in a quizzical fashion.
You know, that sounds kind of familiar, and yet it doesn't. No one has really asked me for that before. All right, but there will be certain...
Yamcha brushed this aside. Conditions, I know, get on with it.
How rude!
After that wish, there was no change, even when Porunga had said the wish was done. Mori and the other Namekians were pretty perplexed by this wish. Had the brave Yamcha used them for his own ends? It was getting a bit worrisome.
What is your second wish?
I wish for you to never grant wishes. Ever again. You can't do that! It's impossible! The Namekians shouted. But Porunga showed everyone that it was possible, as he had already granted this wish. His last wish.
How could you do that, Yamcha? What have we done to you to deserve this?
Oh, nothing. It's because you don't matter. You're not involved in what I'm about to do. Now excuse me, I have a long way home. I might return someday though. The Namekian warriors decided to block his path to the exit. But Yamcha looked unconcerned at this. A purple aura danced around him, and his wolf-fang fists tore them apart, as if they were made of paper.
He's gone insane. I have to warn Dende!
Mori was going to say some more, but he got caught by his throat.
If you tell anyone about this, I'll blow up this planet. Do we understand each other?
But Mori had already started sending a message.
What a pity. I hoped to leave you for last.
If something was in Namek's orbit, they would have seen the planet exploding in a blast of purple energy. And in the middle of all of it was Yamcha, his skin pale purple, his hair white. He was laughing.
Well, this franchise has been going on for way too long. Let's end it.
And so Yamcha went on his rampage against Universe 7. And that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now. So what do you folks think? Can he be stopped? What sort of power could possibly do that job? You'll have to find out in the next parts of Yamcha versus the Dragon Ball universe. Leave a comment below, and let's get the discussion going. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!